Hello and welcome back to the Double Clutch podcast. I'm one of your usual hosts, Mike Miller. Once again tonight, I am joined by a man who looks like he's had a bit of a rumble, maybe had a beef with someone. Looks like he could do with some prime steak to put over that eye. It's Mr. Josh Coyne. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm great. It's a pleasure to be back with this kind of increased bad boy image that I now have for the Double Clutch audience. I'm kind of channeling my 2010 Steve Nash.
Excellent. And the tie-dye to boot. What a great combo. Here we are again. We are in the midst of live games going on. This is crazy. At the minute, we've got Phoenix playing the OKC Thunder, which is why I just looked up because I've got it on the screen above my head. And then Dallas are playing shortly. This is fantastic, but incredibly awkward to try and talk about current things going on when they are literally unfolding. We've got lots to talk about today. We've got lots of listener questions to get through. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in. Thank you for everyone who's listening back. If you're not already, please follow us at Double Clutch UK on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. If you're not on our Discord server, you should be. It's discord.me/Double Clutch. And if you're not watching us on Twitch, you should be. It's twitch.tv/Double Clutch UK. The man making the magic happen, who you can't see on screen, is Kirk Killick. Thank you to Kirk for sorting all this out. Let's talk some NBA. Let's jump straight into some news, and let's go with some really, really recent news. The game is happening now. It's 67-64 to the Phoenix Suns. DeAndre Ayton did not attend his COVID test yesterday, so he was unable to join the team until his retest results had come in. They came in literally minutes before the game started, and he had to essentially run across campus in order to make the game, and was available for the second quarter onwards. That is madness. What's your reaction to that?
My reaction is that it reminds me of times when maybe I was late to school and you kind of get that guilt trip of, or even late to work, maybe historically, and people saying, look, you need to, for the common goal, you need to put a shift in here. How could you possibly be late for work? And guess what? Ayton's turned up late for work, and he just so happens to be doing it with much bigger things at stake. So that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah, I like that analogy. It kind of reminds me of trying to get an assignment in for whatever time it was at uni, and have only just started writing it about 10 minutes before it's due. Not that I did that or condone that. Definitely not. It's bizarre. How has he allowed himself to be in this position, given what happened at the start of the season, where he failed a drug test for a flushing agent, was banned for 24 games? How? When that's happened already and your team essentially needs to go undefeated, how do you as a professional athlete allow this to happen?
It's one of those ones where I always have to try and err on the side of caution in terms of I guess you never know why he's late, but it feels like they just have a couple of simple steps they have to follow through their day, and then it's just like go and hang out by the pool if you haven't got a game or whatever. This isn't really difficult work. It's not like a army boot camp or anything. But anyway, I think that Robert Williams, who kind of doesn't like his nickname of Time Lord in the Celtics, I think he's watching on keenly in the hope that DeAndre's going to take his title.
3 minutes. 3 minutes you lasted till the first Boston reference. That's fine. Okay, so let's move on to some more general news. The first playoff series are locked, 1-8 in the East, 2-7 in the East. So essentially, the Wizards got eliminated. No surprise there. They took 6 big L's. The Bucks will be playing the Magic. The Raptors will be playing the Nets. Any surprises there? Are you pleased that we're almost at that stage where playoff basketball begins?
Yeah, I can't wait. It does get to that point, doesn't it, where you kind of get towards the tail end of the season. You just want to, especially with the current kind of basketball news that we're seeing unfold, where people are kind of falling out, these rivalries are building, and the intensity's heating up. You do kind of, it whets your appetite for when postseason actually truly begins. But I'm glad it's all starting to kind of fall into place, and I think. Disappointed with some of the omissions now, with the likes of the Pelicans missing out for the playoffs. JJ Redick for the first time in probably 150 years.
How big is it that the Nets claimed the 7th spot over the Magic in the 8th seed?
It's huge. It's obviously hugely disappointing for our UK Magic fans that we have.
Strong Magic presence here in the UK.
Strong Magic presence. And it's huge for them because, I mean, no one wants to go into the postseason facing Giannis in the first round, even if, the Raptors have turned out to be quite special. But I think anyone's doing anything they can to avoid someone like Giannis. So I think it's huge for them.
So do you think it's less of a 4-game series and more of a 5-game series now?
I still think it's a 4-game series, but certainly more of a chance of taking a game.
If it was a 4-game series, I think I'd rather get swept by the Bucks because then at least you can say it was the best team in the conference potentially. The playoff play-in is also on, so we get to see this mad idea that's been thrown out, especially for the bubble. The game will be on Saturday, August the 15th, 7:30 British Summer Time. Essentially, if the 9th seed win, it forces a second game, which we'll be playing on the Sunday at 9:30 p.m. But if the 9th seed lose, they're out. So basically, the 9th seed needs to win twice to get in. As you mentioned, the Pelicans have been eliminated, so have the Kings, not surprisingly. Then there's a really tight cluster here to see which team is going in. Because obviously, the rules are within 4 games, you qualify for this playoff play-in happening. The Blazers are half a game back on Memphis, who have the 8th seed at the minute, both with 2 games to play. Memphis are 1-5 so far in the bubble, and they'll be playing Boston and the Bucks for their last 2 games. The Bucks have everything locked up, so I wouldn't be surprised if they rest everyone for that game. But particularly the Boston game, there's a pick on the line here, essentially. So Boston have the Grizzlies pick. It's likely to be a lottery pick it will be a lottery pick if the Grizzlies fall out of the 8th seed into the 9th seed. It's top 6 protected. The chances of it being a top 6 pick are something stupid like less than 2%. Do you think, for the sake of 14th versus 16th pick, Boston are actually going to care about this game? Because I'm hearing things like, this means a lot. There's a pick on the line here. But 14th versus 16th, is that much of a difference in what is rumoured to be quite a bland draft?
It's a tough one. I'm not sure it is much of a difference, but it's a tough one as well because you hear this kind of conversation all the time when teams are tanking for a good pick in the draft. Is that it's a really, really hard sell to get your players to play for future picks. I mean, that's a front office and coaching issue that they're more invested in that. Sure, they want to play with as good a player as they can next year. But some of these guys are fighting for a spot in the rotation, and they're not desperate for new impressive rookies to come in, regardless of where they are in the draft. So I think it's a really hard sell for a team like Boston to kind of become more motivated by that kind of thing. That's kind of front office stuff. But I do think Boston, when they lock in, are a problem for teams like the Grizzlies. And I think that with them and the Bucks, even if they do rest, they still have some weapons that could cause Memphis some problems. So I think that the path is tougher for Memphis, but yeah, it's going to be fascinating.
Yep, it's really, really, really tight because then half a game behind the Blazers, you've got the Spurs, and then half a game back on the Spurs, you've got the streaking Suns, who are, well, in a game right now, potential to go 6-0, the only undefeated team in the bubble. Do you think the playoff play-in will be between the Grizzlies and the Blazers, or do you think there's a chance the Suns get in or the Spurs get in?
I think it's the Grizzlies and the Blazers. Unfortunately, that's the less exciting, sexy answer, but I think that that's likely what we're going to see. But obviously, that's going to take Grizzlies being able to pick up a win in some tough games.
Yep. And then okay, so that's fine. So we've got those two in there. Which one of those two is making the playoffs?
I just cannot bet against the Portland Trailblazers, regardless of any missed free throws we've seen recently. I just can't bet against them. So I think the Portland Trailblazers are making the playoffs.
It's going to be a tough run for them. Like they have, it's not the easiest stretch they've got left. Then obviously they'll have to win both games against the Grizzlies, and then that finishes on the 2 days before the playoffs start. So they will be back in action. This is going to be a slog. It's almost like, I get it, they didn't want to be there originally unless there was some hope of making the playoffs. Now there is, but it's almost going to be a detriment to them to then turn up tired and battered. The way Dame is having to carry such a load at the minute, just to get smashed in the first round by the Lakers. Obviously the Lakers, they can provide matchup problems for, but I don't know. It just seems like this dangled carrot of the playoff play-in is actually far harder than it perhaps appears.
Yeah, well, the buzzword for the last 5 months or so is that everything is unprecedented, and we haven't seen like a unprecedented run like this into the playoffs. Like, this is a hard route to take into a potential series with the Los Angeles Lakers with LeBron James. So it's going to be really tough, but we just, it's one of those ones that you just kind of have to be kind of almost accepted as almost like these kind of situations create difficult circumstances for sports teams. And I think that I am rambling on this one. Basically, yeah, it's going to be really tough. It's going to be really tough.
It's a hard slog, but it'll be worth it if they make it. Let's move now to awards votings, because the league has released the finalists for each category of the awards. So for MVP, we've got Giannis, we've got Harden, and we've got LeBron. Who is your MVP, and is there anyone you think has been missed out of that three-man cut?
Well, I'm going for Giannis. Giannis is just kind of like, when you look at that, when you look at his stats, and obviously he's been able to get his team to the top of the East. The numbers are incredible. He's been amazing on both ends. So I think once again, I think Giannis is the MVP. But I think that Luka Doncic has been snubbed. So if anyone is on the kind of peripherals as someone who should have been in this shortlist, I think it's Luka. He's been largely affected, I think, in terms of not making the ranking by the team's 7th seed, which is only a few games back from Harden's Rockets, but I think that's played a massive part in it. He's averaging 29, 10, and 9 if you round the numbers up in his second year in the league. He controls the pace of the game, and he involves his teammates more effectively than anyone that isn't named LeBron James in the league. And Harden has him on points, but he's kind of ahead of him in other key statistics. So I think he could have easily been in this kind of final three. And from a selfish standpoint, his game is kind of profoundly more satisfying to watch, in my opinion.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I've got no arguments there. Giannis was my choice for MVP. And if Luka's not in that conversation, that's a travesty. Rookie of the Year, Ja Morant, Kendrick Nunn, and Zion. Should Zion even make that list?
Yeah, so this is always going to be an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's about kind of it's about a multitude of things. It can be about their performance in a small sample size, which is what we've seen from Zion Williams, or the season's work that they've put in. I'm firmly against the Zion Williamson Rookie of the Year vote. He is a future superstar in the league. He's kind of transcendent talent, obviously, and he's now already kind of a cultural touch point within the league. He's a massive name, but he's only played 23 games so far this year, and Morant's been incredible, and I think slowly has become the consensus pick for Rookie of the Year. So whilst it's exciting to see Zion's name on the list, I think that it has to be Ja for Rookie of the Year. But then if it's kind of been widely accepted that Zion probably shouldn't be Rookie of the Year, then really is this just kind of an honouring inclusion in the top three in itself? When really, if you're thinking about the way this kind of thing affects a young guy's career as he enters the league, then why not give it to someone like Brandon Clark, who has played a large part of the season, 53 games in fact, and he should be on this shortlist, because if you really think about the effect that this has on people's careers and kind of as they kind of leapfrog their way into the league, then I think it's great, because we already know who Zion Williamson is, and we've only had 23 games of him. So in my opinion, Ja's Rookie of the Year, Brandon Clark should have probably snuck in.
Yep. No disagreements on Ja at all. Absolutely phenomenal rookie season. I'd be tempted to throw even someone who had a much smaller, not in terms of games played compared to Zion, but in his role on the team, someone like Matisse Thybulle. I think he's just absolutely incredible in terms of his poise and his character and his ability to get stops as a rookie. I think he's someone who should have been in the conversation. And he kind of hit a point as well. If Zion is on this three but can't win it, why is it an honor? Why should he be there? It almost feels like, you know how you get the leaders in assists and steals and all those statistical categories. It kind of feels like there should be a minimum amount of games played, like some sort of threshold put in there, so that it just takes the conversation and argument away. But then again, if it took the conversation and argument away, we wouldn't have this now. We wouldn't be talking about it. So that's exactly what the NBA wants. They want us talking about the NBA. That is what we are doing. Most improved player: Bam, Luka, and Brandon Ingram. Luka's already come out and said Devontae Graham should be in there instead of him. What are your thoughts on that selection?
Yeah, I think that Luka hit the nail on the head. Devontae Graham should have been in ahead of him. I think that Luka's inclusion on this list is solely because of what I've already discussed about his snub from the MVP Final Three. He shouldn't be on the list. I wouldn't have. I think that it would actually be doing the Luka MVP case a disservice if I stood by him in most improved player. He's had a significant jump, don't get me wrong, but he's a generational talent who is in his second year, as I mentioned. This award, as far as I'm concerned, is generally for guys who have seen significant improvement in their public image as well as on court. I think that sometimes it's a reputation thing, and that's why people get in here, because maybe they've been forgotten, or maybe they've been kind of assumed to be on the peripheries of a team, and then they kind of had a jump and really carve a role for themselves in the team. Increased his value. He has increased his value, Devontae Graham, and I think that unlike Luka, he's somebody that maybe needs that from a reputational point of view. I know that I'm kind of making it sound like between him and Brandon Clark, it's like a charity vote, but it isn't. You know, like he's seen a significant jump in his performance this year, and once again, it's huge for people like that to be included in the final three of an awards vote.
So who would be your most improved then? Because it sounds like it's between Brandon Ingram or Bam Adebayo.
Yeah, I think it's. I think I'm going to go for Ingram. He's had a really strange time of the last year or so. He's moved from kind of a strange developmental situation in LA, battled through some weird, unique health issues, and he's made a big leap in productivity. So I think just for the sake of narrative, I'm going for Brandon Ingram alone.
He's definitely, and this is where I sort of have a problem with this award. It seems to be geared around not just improvement, but opportunity as well. And he's flourished in a different situation where he's given the ball more and therefore has more opportunity to put numbers on the board, those high level statistics that, you know, the box score, everyone captures that and uses that as their analysis. Whereas you look at someone, you look at someone like Bam Adebayo, who has had a similar role for the past couple of seasons. He just continues to grow in it and produce. And actually, you're seeing a different kind of improvement. It's not just down to opportunity. It's down to experience and working his ass off, quite frankly. So Bam would be my pick. And it's just, I don't know. It's just a difference in opinion in terms of how they should view the award, because so many guys we know from guys like, for example, TJ Warren right now in the bubble. He's been given a different opportunity because of the situation they're in with the roster. The Pacers are in with Sabonis is out and Oladipo's recovering, and because of that, he's been allowed to shine. So, in a regular season, if he'd produced like this, people would say, he should qualify for most improved. But actually, it's just he should qualify for a whole new award that I'm going completely off the rails with now, saying new opportunity, dude.
The New Opportunity Dude Award. I love
the New Opportunity Dude Award. Congratulations, new job guy. I don't know. Anyway, Defensive Player of the Year is between Giannis Antetokounmpo, Anthony Davis, and Rudy Gobert. Do you have a pick on that? And are you surprised that there are no wings involved? Well, Giannis is kind of a non-positional player. But yeah.
Well, I have some thoughts. I mean, I think that I'd go for Giannis on this award. Is massive part of the best D in the league. In terms of nominations, I do think that there is a little bit of a potential bias against wing guys. Not necessarily wing guys, but smaller defensive specialists who have been left out to dry on a few occasions now. And what I always go to for this kind of thing is when you hear, because I listen to a lot of stuff where players talk about the game and maybe their opposition and people throughout the league. And, for example, Damian Lillard today was talking about Drew Holiday. In a podcast I was listening to today, was speaking about Drew Holiday being hands down the best defender in the league. And I think that the same kind of thing, and you're going to love this, how many minutes are we in now? 20 minutes. I think that also happens to Marcus Smart. I think he continues to be one of those people who is overlooked because people do like to see guys protecting the rim, and that's great. It plays a massive part in teams' fate. But I think it comes to a point where voters have to consider perimeter defenders who massively affect the way that the opposition play the game, like Drew Holiday, like Marcus Smart. I think Marcus Smart comes out with plays that 0.5% of the league can make on a nightly basis, and he swings games with his effort. He routinely makes players with the best handles in the league pick the ball up, turn it over, or completely change what they were going to do. He regularly guards teams' most physical bigs and then switches back onto people with the best handle in the league. Like he's the kind of guy who got famous for switching onto Paul Millsap, and that became a bit of a meme where he completely locked down Paul Millsap 2-3 years ago. But that's something he does on a nightly basis. When they played the Bucks, he did the same thing to Giannis, who had to force himself into a really dodgy looking fadeaway against Marcus Smart, who is almost half of his size. So I think we need to start kind of respecting wings more, or smaller defensive specialists, when we come into this vote, because it's massive for bigs and what they do inside the lane to become defensive beasts. But it's only one side of a team, and I think that that being said, I do think I would go. Did you even ask me who I was going to go for?
I think you led with it. I think you went with Giannis, didn't you?
Oh yes, okay. I got so wrapped up in my emotional rant.
Couldn't remember what you said. For what it's worth, I wholeheartedly agree with you on the selection of Giannis, and I'm not going to wind you up about talking about the Celtics, because that is 100% accurate as well. Marcus Smart deserves to be mentioned on there. I don't think the Jazz have. I think they've fallen off a bit this year defensively. I don't know why they've limited it to 3 guys as well. And if you are going to focus so much on it being an interior big guy who gets the blocks and the rebounds, then have some kind of rim defender award and a perimeter award, because guys who are smaller are being left out. And I get that the last line of defense literally is the big man for when their sort of perimeter defense fails and a drive comes through. They are the last line of defense, but they are not the only guys defending.
My favourite part is that if you took over from Adam Silver, we'd have 465 award categories. For every part of the game.
Gets one.
New man, dude, or what it was, I can't remember. But just to put the cherry on top of my emotional rant, because I did start to break a sweat. Boston have the 4th best defense in the league. That's one place behind Anthony Davis's Lakers, who have someone called LeBron James that also plays some defense, and now and then, and 7 places ahead of Gobert's Jazz. So if you're going to start awarding people who actually affect a really good defense, then that's why I'm so kind of passionate about Marcus Smart's inclusion.
How much stronger is your passionate rage going to be if he does not make an all-defensive team? In fact, let's just narrow it down. Doesn't make the first teim.
I've kind of got to the point where I'm pretty numb to it. It's happened a few times now. But it'd be quite a passionate reaction. Maybe I can jump back on the pod then. I feel like if it didn't happen to Drew Holiday as well, I think that people would be equally as upset.
I think one of the difficulties with Drew Holiday is that the Pelicans market is so small. Unless you are in New Orleans, you're not talking about the Pelicans. And if you are talking about the Pelicans this year, it's only because of Zion, and that's it. And I just think this is covered by national media who vote on it, and I just don't think they see outside of the big markets as much as they really ought to. Sixth man of the year: Montrezl Harrell, Dennis Schroeder, or Sweet Lou Williams. Who have you got?
Well, I've got Trez on this one. I think it should always be between Schroeder and Harrell. I think Harrell adds a kind of new dynamic to the team when he enters the game. I actually think only one member of that team really should be nominated, because surely one man is sixth and one man is seventh. Like the math doesn't work out to me. So just to be pedantic, I think only one of the guys should be included. But I would go for Trez. I think that he's had more minutes than Lou, so there's something to go off. And I personally think his energy to this team has a more significant impact on the team. Not to play down, obviously, Lou Williams' amazing offensive spark, but I'm going with Trez. What about you?
I think I'm inclined to agree with that, but I don't think he'll get it. And I think Schroeder has a very, very, very strong case. I mean, he's backing up. He's essentially had to accept a much smaller role than he had in Atlanta. He's now Chris Paul's backup. He's in fact SGA's essential backup. He's like the third string guard, and yet he's still coming in and producing, and he's keeping his head down and working. He had some off-court issues in Atlanta. We're not hearing anything about that now. He's not in the bubble at the minute because he's, with his wife for the birth of their first child. He seems to have got his act together, and he seems to have sort of battened down and turned into a pro's pro, for want of a better description. So I wouldn't have any issue at all with Schroeder winning it. I think he's probably most likely to win it just because of if you've got two Clippers, they're going to take votes away from each other.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Coach of the year, and we've got a listener question on this, so I'll bring that in a second. But Coach of the year, your choice is between Coach Bud, Mike Budenholzer of the Milwaukee Bucks, Billy Donovan of the OKC Thunder, and Nick Nurse of the Toronto Raptors.
I think that I actually had quite a long back and forth on this one. I think that I'd go with Nurse. I think that he's actually improved their win percentage after an impressive year last year, and after they went on to win the championship that year. So and they had the loss of one of the league's best players. I mean, it's, as we all know, that's a very difficult thing to. I don't know why I said as we all know, as we've ever played at that level, but fine. We have, as a league, and its following, we've gone on to kind of understand that that's a really difficult thing to recover from. He's galvanized pieces of a really deep roster to kind of maximize their play. And I think that he's taken big steps to kind of improve a team that surely can't. Sorry to ramble again, but I basically think that it seems as though it was an impossible task for them to improve without Kawhi, but he's done it. I think he's really exceeded expectation of a drop-off, as everyone expected.
Yeah, massively. They were supposed to regress back to being the Raptors of old, but slightly worse than the sort of Lowry DeRozan team that was always consistently good, but never able to get out the first round. And instead of, obviously the playoffs are yet to come, but they are still the second seed. They are an incredibly strong team with a next man up mentality and a great. He's meshed together a number of big egos, big talents, and different skill sets. I was shocked, even appalled, if you will, that the coaches' coach of the year, which was voted on by the 30 NBA coaches, somehow got Bud and Donovan as the co-coach of the year, and Nurse was just behind them. But how did they not pick him to be? It just baffles my mind. He would be my choice. The question we had from a listener, shout out to Rich Barrett, legend. Thoughts on the Coach of the Year award being shared? Is it a cop-out? And would you want a shared award if you were one of the two winners? No, I wouldn't want that shared award. Don't give me that. No, don't put co in front of it. If I'm a co, then I didn't win it. It's a draw.
No.
Have some kind of, I don't know.
Yeah. It's not called the one of the Coaches of the Year award. I think that it's always a cop out when they share things. They just have to make a decision and stick with it, double down, because Once again, like you said, this kind of thing doesn't hurt the league. It just creates further discourse, and it makes saddos like us talk about it for like months.
Why not? Yeah, why don't they? If they voted on Co, they should have some kind of computer system which tells them the situation, and they have to run some kind of play, and then they get a probability back. Oh, you win. Do like a sudden death, ATO shootout sort of thing.
Like a coach off.
A coach off. There we
go. Ball fight. Tonight was a ball fight, man.
Yeah, fight to the death even. Yeah.
Could have a bar fight, or they could create kind of an 8 Mile style scenario where they're on stage in a club, and they just kind of they cite their favorite out of bounds plays.
I would be down for that. Okay, so that's the awards and the potential winners. Let's go back to the Phoenix Suns. Is it time to get excited about this team? Maybe not for their immediate success, but for next season. Are you buying into this?
Yeah. So I think they've obviously got some really, really exciting pieces, and I think the main thing to be excited for at the moment is just how freely they're playing. They've obviously been incredible since the bubble opened, and this is kind of low in the list of things you would have expected going into the bubble is an unbeaten run by the Phoenix Suns. Mm-hmm. The last 5 years have really taught us to kind of tamper our expectations around the Suns because they've made some ropey moves. They've been, some would say, badly managed. But why not get excited? Especially even this year. They have won some huge games since entering the bubble, and they have guys who can make significant shots. So whilst probably not likely that they make any postseason noise, in fact, it's a real outside shot. If you're excited about them making any noise, you do have to temper it. But you kind of silently, quietly, kind of meekly thinking, you know what, these Phoenix Suns are actually quite good, and it's all kind of falling into place. What about you?
I was excited at the hot start they had at the start of the season, and based on that, I thought they could come in here and hit the ground running. I did not expect them to go 5-0. As we speak, they are up 98-81, so there's basically a 30-point swing since the first quarter. Likely to go 6 and I've said it now. Likely to go 6-0. I've jinxed it now. They're going to lose. massive downfall. They've then got back to back. They're playing Philly tomorrow, and then they've got Dallas on Thursday. So it's they need to win every game. I love this idea of a Cinderella story. Do I think it's going to go any further than a first round exit? No. Do I think it's going to go to them getting into the playoff play-in? I think it's highly, highly, highly unlikely. I would love it if they did, though. I just think they're an exciting young team.
Awesome.
What's crazy is they're still missing key parts. Like Baines isn't even back in. They're not even back. He's not even back in on the team yet. This is just mad.
No.
I'd love to see it translate somewhat into next year's success or potential success, but I think you're right. Temper expectations. They're not going to suddenly blow the league up. This is a very small sample size of 8 games. It's not easy to win 8 games straight, but it is quite easy to put together a good run in a short period. And 8 of 82 is less. It's 10% of your full season. So I think it's difficult. Certainly, the Valley Boys need to get excited because their team is finally turning heads and making noise. But it's going to be a growth for them, growing phase. I can't think of the word I'm saying. It's a learning curve. We'll call it that. I think they could be really, really good in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, and what they need, obviously, and this is something that's been kind of in the general NBA discourse, is that they need the key parts to stick around. And once again, they haven't been managed that brilliantly over the last few years, but now they've found something. Now they've found that actually they've got some real promise. So they really will be hoping. The Valley Boys will be hoping that these key parts stick around.
Mm-hmm. Monty Williams seems like a good coach as well. He's been a solid assistant for a few years. He's been a head coach previously as well. Devin Booker has been good for a long time. I've given him a lot of crap over the years for not being able to win, and it feels like the shift in momentum is allowing him to do things differently. And if I guess it must be hard to be on the losing end every single night and try and put forth an effort on other areas of the court. It must come a lot easier when you're winning, and now we're starting to see the other little things that you could do. Maybe I've been harsh on him in the past, and I accept that. Like he's a very, very, very good player. So good that Draymond Green has been fined $50,000 for tampering. He said, "You've got to get my boy out of there." Is that right? Do you think he can succeed in Phoenix, or do you think he's going to need to go somewhere else?
Well, they're winning basketball games, and firstly, I wish that I could get fined 50 grand and laugh about it. So firstly, he tweeted the other day a number of crying, laughing emojis. God, what a life to be able to laugh that one off. But I thought Draymond, he was actually excellent value on that broadcast. He brought some brilliant kind of insight into the actual basketball, but he just couldn't help himself from any kind of histrionics because he always loves to get involved with that kind of thing. But there was that moment as well where he kind of confronted Charles in a really awkward exchange. He was being a bit tongue-in-cheek, but he said that thing about him calling him out. But anyway, what he said to Booker, I think, was just kind of wildly disrespectful because considering the reason that they were even talking about the team in the way that they were is because Phoenix, for the first time in a while, were playing really good basketball. They're on an unbeaten bubble run. They're literally playing their best they have for years. So what good comes from making that kind of comment beyond tampering? I mean, that is, if it's not just the most egregious public tampering, then it's just a completely unnecessary comment. So it's a well-deserved fine. It's a well-deserved fine. And if they're winning basketball games, then you just can't, they've just won 8 games in the NBA season. So you cannot say that there is a chance of them developing, and therefore, why not stay in Phoenix?
With all due respect.
With all due respect.
With all due respect. It's difficult. I think, again, it's a small sample size. I'd like to see him stick around in Phoenix. I think they deserve, as a franchise, some happiness. It's been tough. They had some great teams that failed. 7 seconds or less were phenomenal. The Barkley-led Suns were fantastic. I hope they can keep it together. They seem to have a decent core there now that can grow, and they seem to have the right kind of coach in place. Let's move over to Damian Lillard and the Portland Trailblazers, who everyone is they're changing that penciled into a permanent ink now that they're going to be the team to beat for the 8th seed, essentially. He's having huge games. He dropped 53 last night, I want to say. The second night of a back-to-back, coming up short on 2 free throws where he had the chance to ice the game, essentially, against the Clippers. How impressive has he been in this bubble, essentially, where the Blazers have been playing for their lives, essentially?
I think that he has actually reflected his team quite perfectly because there have been some real kind of Jekyll and Hyde moments. He's obviously been the Dame that we knew earlier this season, where he has dropped insane numbers. But he's also made some kind of pretty dodgy plays in crunch time. So, against Boston, he made a unnecessary play for 2 points when they needed 3. And then the team turned the ball over from the inbound. And then obviously those quite frankly, choking free throws, they were big. But then again, he comes through as a reaction to some off-court stuff. He comes through with an amazing performance last night. But they've also lost, his team themselves have actually lost some big games and dropped the proverbial ball on a number of times when they probably could have made this route to the postseason easier than it is looking at the moment. Even if they are going to meet LA in the first round. So they're definitely one of the most interesting teams to watch, and he's definitely the most interesting player to watch that isn't called TJ Warren or Luka Doncic at the moment.
He's definitely up there. He's a phenomenal talent. The chance of him missing those free throws was pretty slim, given how great a shooter he is from the free throw line. He has been clutched before. I don't know if I think maybe I get why it would be called a choke, but at the same time, is it really? He missed 2 free throws. I wonder if this was a psychological issue, because on the JJ Redick podcast, he spoke about how weird it was to hit a big shot, and there'd be no crowd noise in the arena. You essentially just, okay, let's go back on D. Whereas in a game, you can sense the sort of the build up, the intensity of the moment. The crowd are sort of waiting for that, and he sort of feeds off it. And maybe this was the first sort of bubble forced era.
Yeah, well, that firstly, what an amazing listen that was. That was a great interview. So good reference, because if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it. But you're completely right. I think it's a really interesting part of it. He's grown a reputation as an absolute killer in the kind of game night environment where there's a roaring crowd. He mentioned, like he said, that he kind of gets driven by the murmuring of the fans who kind of have that sound of anticipation around the arena. So for someone who kind of thrives in that kind of crunch atmosphere, I think that maybe it does take away some of his edge. So some of the onlooking eyes, the thousands of people who want him to make a shot, the less pressure actually makes it more difficult for him to perform, perhaps. But I think it's also worth noting as well that they were playing in something of a pickup environment. Sure, there's crowd noise pumped in, but that doesn't make it a game night, a kind of normal game night. So I think that the other interesting part is they're playing in a pickup environment, so he would have been able to hear everything that those guys were saying on the sideline. Like, you think about how many times me and you have played kind of basketball in the gym, and we've been able to hear the other bench whilst we're taking free throws. It does have an effect. Unless you're some kind of robot, it has an effect. And if it's someone like Patrick Beverley kind of openly mocking you as loud as he possibly can on the sideline, then yeah, sure, it might have an effect on your free throw shooting.
I remember once being completely thrown off by a member of my own team from the bench encouraging me. Like, he was down, he was literally the other end of the court on the bench, and Kirk was probably at this game, Kirk was producing, and they were just like, "Go on, Mike," and I just heard it as I was sort of in my route, and I was just like, "What?" And it just completely threw me, and I bricked both air balls completely.
That makes you think about what you're playing for. You need to get, like, I always try to convince myself that it doesn't, like, who cares? It's just pick up basketball. Like no, literally there is nothing that comes from me making or missing the shot, really, in the grand scheme of things. So I try and convince myself that at the line. But if you hear someone on the, encouraging you and basically saying, "We need you to make this free throw," then that's going to add added pressure. But Dame would.
I remember having, bless him. Shout out to Adam Morris. But bless him, I had a right go at him when we went back in the next time out. I was like, "Just don't talk to me ever." And now it's a thing that happens. Enough about my terrible basketball career. We had a question from Matt Hardy, UK Nets fans. Where does the Pat Beverley Dame Lillard beef rank all time in the NBA? Go for it.
I think it ranks quite, it's quite low down. I think it's recency bias would make us think that it's a bigger deal than it is. It's massive, but we've actually seen bigger beefs with Damian Lillard. I think that actually it's the nature of how it started. He already talked on that JJ Redick podcast about the ongoing things he's had with Patrick Beverley, and he's shrugged it off afterwards because it means nothing to him. But the way it's been covered, the social media interaction makes it so much more entertaining for NBA Twitter. So as far as NBA Twitter is concerned, it might be one of the biggest rivalries ever because it's been fantastic to watch him fold. But the thing is, though, my take on it is that Lillard easily came out on top. He kept his cool about it afterwards. He wasn't falling over himself on the sidelines in front of the cameras. And when the Instagram interaction unfolded, he basically stated facts about the fact that it's a regular season. No one was being sent home that night, unlike, the way he said, unlike he has sent them home in the past. And it's an interesting one because I think Lillard seems to be the kind of guy who has a life outside of basketball. Basketball, someone mentioned this recently, is that basketball is his job and his passion, but he's a guy who isn't there to make friends. And in a time when NBA is probably more collegial than ever, he's just in his own zone. He seems to be someone who just plays his ass off, earns people's respect that way, and doesn't do much, chattering. And I think that kind of bothers people in the league. But is there anybody in the world, or on NBA Twitter at least, who isn't a Clippers fan, who isn't on Dame's side here?
Yeah, no, I get that. My reaction to how big a beef or where does it rank all time was meh. Like, I think there's a mutual respect. Well, I'd say certainly respect from Patrick Beverley to Dame after he sent the Rockets home a few years back. Again, another JJ Redick podcast, a great interview recently where Patrick Beverley said after he played him, that made him realise he needed to get in the gym and get stronger and quicker because this guy had just done that to him. And it motivated him, and you don't do that with someone that you're disrespecting. I just think here, what you've got is someone who's caught up in the moment of the competition and the essence of that, wanting to win, even though he wasn't playing. And as you say, no crowd noise was heard or seen. There's more focus on it, and then it spilled over into social media. But we're going to play a quick game of Got Beef, and I want you to rank how big you think this beef is, and then I'll give you some other beefs as well. But it's on a scale of 1 to 5. So if it's 1, it's not beef at all. It's scrambled tofu.
Okay.
2 is an imitation McDonald's ground beef burger. Have to say imitation to avoid lawsuits. 3 is grass-fed organic prime cut speciality lean mince. 4 is a Chateaubriand at an above-average restaurant. And 5 is a rare 1.6 Wagyu tomahawk, which retails at 180 quid. I googled that earlier. Rank this beef on that scale of 1 to 5.
So there's no way I'm going to remember what you just said about the but I'm going to go with what did you say for number 2? All time, did you say? All time.
We're going all time. Number 2 is an imitation McDonald's ground beef burger.
Yeah, give me Ronald McDonald. That's what I'm going for. Number 2.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to throw some more at you. KD versus Russ.
Oh, KD versus Russ felt incredibly personal, and those are always the worst, isn't it? It's the fallouts between friends or even scorned lovers that make for the most kind of enthralling story. So I actually think, oh yeah, give me that kind of well-seasoned Wagyu.
Oh, you're on 5. That's okay. Yeah, okay. Ray Allen versus the Celtics.
Oh. Well, I'm going to go with once again, I'm going for the imitation number 2, the imitation McDonald's burger, number 2. And the reason being is because I think it's initially, I think it was something of a kind of almost one-way rivalry, one-way beef. I think whilst Ray may have had some ill feelings towards the team because he didn't get what he wanted before he headed out, I think that it was just kind of Boston fans and obviously KG and Pierce and kind of people who definitely hold on to a lot of grudges were kind of resenting him, but I think he was off to go do his thing in Miami. So I think I'm going to go for a number 2 again.
Okay. D'Angelo Russell, Swaggy P.
You've got to take the kind of strange entertainment aspect. When
for a reminder for listeners, basically, this ended Swaggy P's engagement to Iggy Azalea. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to go. You know what? I'm going to go because it was so unbelievably sneaky. I'm going to go with number 3. What was number 3?
Grass-fed organic prime cut speciality lean mince.
Yeah, give me that.
That's actually what my laugh sounds like in my head right now. Harden versus Giannis. Obviously, this is something that's being picked up since Giannis won the MVP last season and spilled over into All-Star selection and post-game comments.
The reason I think that this falls behind KD and Russ is because of the lack of kind of personal relationship that have been built over the space of years and then kind of crumbled. But it is something that's been really spicy. And it even has its kind of own meme with the throwing the ball at his face. So I'm gonna go with number 4. What kind of beef is that?
A Chateaubriand at an above-average restaurant.
Okay, with Chateaubriand.
We'll do 2 more. Matt Barnes versus Derrick Fisher, which I think involved Matt Barnes driving up a freeway to try and start a fight.
Okay, so that's golden. Is there an improvement on number 5?
Okay, so 6 can be 2. 1.6 kilogram Wagyu tomahawk steaks at an excellent restaurant. Okay, so we're 6 for that.
Yeah, 6.
Final one then, which we saw still simmers today, thanks to the Last Dance. Michael Jordan versus Isaiah Thomas.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I think we're having 3 steaks at the excellent restaurant.
this is bigger than driving up a freeway.
Yeah, well, it is, isn't it? Because you think about what's at stake here is the dream team, the greatest team in basketball history, the most famous team in basketball history was at stake here. Isaiah missed out because of this beef. And it's lasted so many years, and we're still hearing about it in the biggest show of the year. So give me 3 steaks and lots of sauce.
Perfect. Right. Okay. That was a random detour. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I think we should probably hit some listener questions quickly. Let's have a quick look. Now we've had a decent sample. This is from Adam Connor 90. Now we've had a decent sample size of Bubble Life. Who wins the chip, and why will it be the Brooklyn Nets?
That's a really good question. My answer is that it will be the Nets, and it's going to be the Nets because Kyrie Irving is point god. He sees things through a third eye, and he's not afraid to call out the media on their bullshit. And frankly, he's the greatest leader in NBA history. Surely, he's not present with the team, but he challenges our traditional views on what being present actually means.
Right. So you're okay. So you're suggesting that despite not being with the team, the Nets will win based on just how woke Kyrie is. Okay. Perfect.
If he thinks it will happen.
It's a bit Tin Cup, that is. Or Tin Hat, rather, in this situation. Okay, I'm not even going to answer that question. Actually, I will, but I'll try and answer it properly. At the start of the season, I had Clippers and Philly. One of those teams definitely won't be there. I struggled to see past those top 3 teams. I think that's probably a cop-out answer. I think the champions will reside in LA. That's just how I'm feeling at the minute. And I'm probably wrong to feel that way. That's what I went with at the start. I keep leaning towards the Bucks, but then I keep being stung by Coach Bud. I think he's trolling every prediction I make at the minute. We had another question from Rich Barrett. Who is the bubble MVP so far? We mentioned a few good ones earlier.
Yeah, I mean, it's unequivocally TJ Warren. Obviously, we've seen some amazing performances from other people, but his scoring performances of 53, 34, 32, 16, and 39. But then in that game where he, had his quietest game and only had 16, he grabbed 11 rebounds. He's become a legitimate weapon for this Pacers team. And at 26 years old, it'll be amazing to see kind of what he's like going forward outside of the bubble in terms of his development. He needs to try and sustain this. But yeah, TJ Warren, my bubble MVP.
Okay, that's a good shout. He makes my shortlist of 3 because again I'm hedging because I'm useless at making decisions. I had Devin Booker because he's led a team to 125-99 it is at the minute. So he's led a team to 6 straight wins. He's hit clutch shots. He's just been fantastic. TJ Warren obviously deserves some consideration there, and then Dame as well. I think I'm going to stick with Booker though, just because I'm in a really pro Suns mood at the minute. Elliot from Hoopin' and Luton. Who would be at your bubble lunch table? I'm guessing this is like a bubble version of the dinner party question.
Yeah. So, how many people? What rules are we putting into place here? How many people do we have to do?
Let's go you plus 3 others.
Okay, 3 others. Okay, so. You know what? You burden me with this guilt of mentioning anything Boston, but I'm going to go with Jaylen Brown would be on my table. It seems to be one of the most kind of unique thinkers in the league. I think actually your guy that you mentioned earlier on, Matisse Thybulle, he comes across as a really great young guy. Been watching his vlog a lot. Likeable fella. So he'd probably be my second choice if I'm not thinking about it too deeply. and then give me someone who just re-entered the league. I have an irrational fascination with the guy's lifestyle, the way he used to play, and his personality. So give me Joakim Noah, because I'd love to to have him whilst I eat my 3 steaks.
I'm not sure they're going to have that at the Grand Floridian, but I'm just literally going to go with give me Dame one side, Pat Bev on the other, and I'll kick them in the ankles so they think it's the other one doing it and start a scrap. But then give me JaVale opposite me, so when they deny it's both of them, somehow, because he's so goofy and his online content is fantastic as well, they'll just start on him. And I just think it'd be funny to watch chaos ensue. And in all that time, I can just film it and upload it to his YouTube for him. So more clicks, he'll love it.
We're just both trying to get on high-profile vlogs, aren't we?
That's what it is, yeah. Hashtag content. Joe Holbrook with a shout out to Joe, who used to present the show for a long time. Which bubble coaches do you think should lose their jobs at the end of the year? He's thinking Gentry and Walton. I know for a fact that I want to say 2-3 years ago, Joe and I were both on the same bandwagon on this pod of get Gentry out, and then we had to reverse our decision when they suddenly improved. Do you think that's fair for Gentry to be on the chopping block after 7 games now, and only partial Zion?
I think it's one of those things where whenever teams have legitimate kind of building blocks and they kind of don't make anything from it, people start to panic because it kind of starts to affect that development plan. You have a certain window where players are trying to kind of become what they are and trying to become leaders in themselves on the roster. And I think that people, they see it as wasted time when coaches can't make the most of their building blocks that the front office have actually acquired. But I also agree with Joe about Luke Walton. I think in any job, any performance where you take a significant step back in terms of performance whilst you're at the helm, I think you're in trouble. Specifically, if you're not a proven person as a head coach. So I think Luke Walton may as well get his kind of annual pass at Disney World, because he's not going anywhere back to Sacramento for a sustained period of time. His team has gone backwards, and I think it's pretty troubling for the Kings once again, who do have excellent young pieces like New Orleans and haven't been able to maximize it under Walton's watch.
Yeah, I think Walton is a prime candidate. He's the only guy who hasn't had a built-in excuse for underperforming, essentially. I think Brett Brown is also potentially on the block. There's been that's not just the bubble, though. There's just a wider conversation there about his role on that team, and certainly people are saying maybe he gets a pass because of the injuries to Simmons, because of the injuries to Embiid, but that's the same every year. These guys are always getting injured. Either you need to move on from those players or you need to move on from this coach.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where I am at the minute. I think it would be a bit harsh to get rid of Gentry at this stage, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's not much improvement during this early sort of towards Christmas. I say towards Christmas, season not due to start until December, but sort of the first third of the next season, whenever that takes place, then I can certainly see him being on the chopping block. We've only got a couple more minutes, so let's just hit one more question, then we'll do game of the week. Ginger Shack. Is the bubble a glorified summer league, and the players who have prospered, namely TJ Warren, will disappear into obscurity in the 2020-2021 season? Is that fair?
No, I don't think that's fair. I think that, the summer leagues generally, it's like the players play like there's nothing on the line. And there are kind of very real stakes for a lot of these players in terms of the longevity of their career, how they're perceived among the NBA world. And I think that, 100%, that's unfair, even though I do love you, Ginger Sack. So good question.
So I think it kind of is fair. I think there is going to be, not necessarily TJ Warren, but quite possibly. Like, as I mentioned earlier, this is just a 6-game sample size we've had now. And it's not going to be a huge sample size. It's less than 10% of a season, and we see teams and players go on hot streaks. Someone like, for example, very big stretch of it to make the point here, but something like Linsanity, which happened for 1 February in 2015 15, 16, I don't know. And it made his career, which is great for him. But his actual productivity was only good for that moment. And where we're in a completely unprecedented situation, we've got games are more regular, more frequent. It's just not quite the same. I wonder if there's going to be some more sort of regression to the mean when we get back to normal NBA basketball, whenever that is. It might not even be next season, so maybe I'm wrong for next season. But I think in general, that will be the case. Very quickly then, because we're now out of time. Game of the week, what have you got? Very quickly.
So there are some huge games, and I know that this would have passed by now if you are listening on the podcast. But Pacers Heat tonight is massive. It's what's on everyone's mind. Everyone wants to see that Butler, if he plays, versus TJ Warren matchup because of the beef they had earlier in the season. So 100% my game of the week, even though it's hours away from happening.
I'm going to cheat on my game of the week. I'm going to go for Saturday's as yet unknown, but probably Memphis-Portland playoff play-in. Nice and simple. So we'll end the show there. So thank you for everyone who's dropped in and watched tonight. Thank you to everyone who's listening. Make sure you're following us on all social media at doubleclutch.uk, discord.me/doubleclutch, and twitch.tv/doubleclutchuk. New followers this week on Twitch. We've had Ginger Shack, Big Hazard 01, the Drew League, and thank you to the Drew League for hosting this stream. We've had Lions, Curtis Lab 2, and we've had Just Smart join on Discord as well this evening. So thank you to everyone for helping to grow the community and for getting involved. We will be back next week with another show. Enjoy the hoops in the meantime, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
See it all in the right hand side. Are we live again? Have you just made us live again?